All right, it's Thursday here on the Morning Pitt on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com. I always forget to say that. Well, not always, but I sometimes forget to say that. Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com. The website's right there below, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. It is the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, and recruiting. You find it all at Panther-Lair.com. And, of course, message boards where there's all kinds of conversation happening all day, every day, talking about Pitt sports. As you can imagine, the message boards have been lively in the past 2 days, certainly in the aftermath of Tuesday night's basketball game against Mississippi State. Earlier in the day, the football team started spring practice, so there's been a lot of conversation about that. And all those conversations have carried over as we lead into another spring camp practice today in the South Side. And then, of course, the NCAA tournament first-round game, Pitt against Iowa State tomorrow, 3:10 tip-off in Greensboro, North Carolina. The friendly confines or familiar confines, I should say, where Pitt is 1-1 this season. Listen, while you're here, make sure you like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. The like button's right over there. The subscribe button is right down there. Click that thing, and you can turn on notifications. Make sure you get an alert anytime we post new videos here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, and anytime we go live. We'll be live after the game tomorrow. Not sure what time that'll be. It's scheduled for a 3:10 tip-off. Hopefully it gets started by 3:30. If the game starts at 3:30, we should be live around 5:45 or so, unless the game goes crazy or overtime or anything like that. But if you want to make sure you don't miss it, click the subscribe button, turn on notifications. You get an alert sent to your phone so you always know when we go live. Don't want you to miss out on that. We had a lot of fun on Tuesday night on the post-game show. It was very late, but had a lot of people show up and had a good conversation. I guess this is what happens when you do a live post-game show in the NCAA tournament. You get a lot of people to hang out and talk about the game. We certainly had that on Tuesday night. I think we'll have it again tomorrow. Looking forward to it when it comes. You know, I obviously been thinking a lot about Tuesday night's game, and I tweeted something yesterday morning, just as we were kind of working through the day, thinking about this, thinking about that from the game, doing some wrap-up coverage, and just looking back at the game. What really stood out? And one thing, I tweeted this yesterday morning, and one thing that I really stood out to me is when you look at it, Pitt played 7 players on Tuesday night, obviously. With Federico out, Nate Santos didn't see the floor. None of the walk-ons got out there. It was basically the 5 starters, plus Nike Sabandi, and then Jorge Diaz-Graham played about 4 minutes, I think. He ended up with, where's his, I had his stats here. I wanted to know that. 4 minutes. So, I mean, it was basically, Nelly Cummings played 40. Blake Hinson and Greg Elliott played 38 each. Guillermo played 37. Nike Sabandi played 23. Jamarius Burton, dealing with foul troubles, played 19. And so they didn't use a lot of guys. But what was really interesting to me, what really stood out to me, is that the 6 main guys they used all played a crucial part in getting that win on Tuesday night. And that's not sort of in the cliched, everybody has a role and everybody does a job, and this guy did a great job even if he didn't fill the stat sheet. I'm talking about specific plays that each of those 6 guys made to get the win. I mean, you can start with the obvious of Guillermo Diaz-Graham getting a block on Tolu Smith to reject Mississippi State's best player trying to get a game-winning layup. A huge play after Smith had really taken Diaz-Graham up and down the court pretty much at will. Although Smith didn't end up with a huge stat line, he was not the walking double-double that Avery Johnson promised him to be. He still ended up with 13 points and 8 rebounds, which is somewhat of a testament to Diaz-Graham, somewhat of a testament to Pitt's defensive approach, where they really just packed it in on Smith, and they were willing to concede those outside shots and shots to basically anybody just because they wanted to stop Smith. But he still, it was a tough game for Guillermo Diaz-Graham. He obviously comes up with a huge play the Pitt probably doesn't win the game if he doesn't make that play. Blake Hinson. Blake Hinson gets the 3. Bring up my notes just for the situation there. Blake Hinson drains the 3 to give Pitt a 6-point lead. And that thing was from, it was literally from the logo. Now, the logo in these NCAA tournament games is a little bit bigger than your typical logo, but it still counts if you're touching the logo, and Blake Hinson it was off balance, it was deep, and he drains a three to push it from 55-52 to 58-52, a 6-point lead. Now, given the little run that Mississippi State would go on after that, that was huge. That was a gigantic basket in the game. That 7-0 run that Pitt went on before Mississippi State's 7-0 run, that 7-0 run was huge in the game. And Greg Elliott had a huge part of that as well. I keep saying huge, but it really was. Pitt was down 52-51. Greg Elliott makes both shots on a 1-and-1. And we know we've seen this team in situations where they don't always convert those 1-and-1 opportunities. Obviously, the Notre Dame game comes to mind as a big one. But Elliott goes out there in a clutch situation, 5.5 minutes to go, Pitt down 1, and he makes both. Now Pitt's up 2. And then he gets a jump shot to Pitt, Pitt was up 1. And then Elliott hits a jump shot to put Pitt up by 3 right before the Blake Hinson 3. So that was a huge contribution from Greg Elliott. Nike Sabandi had a couple of transition baskets that I think are probably get overlooked, but they were big plays because it was, Pitt's offense was, I don't want to say struggling. They put up a decent percentage. They obviously only scored 60 points, which is pretty low for them. But it was hard. It was hard to get a lot against Mississippi State's half-court defense. And so getting out in transition and trying to get some baskets off of turnovers or off of defensive rebounds was going to be key. You want those kind of easy baskets. And Pitt was having a hard time finding them. Well, Nike Sabandi in the one that I just glanced down and saw with 7.5 minutes left. Again, Pitt down 1, 51 or 50-49. Sabandi, Blake Hinson grabs a defensive rebound, kicks it ahead to Nike Sabandi, and Sabandi goes on a fast break and scores. So he had a couple transition buckets that I think were absolutely huge to helping this team win. And then Nelly Cummings, who basically everything Nelly Cummings did in that game on Tuesday night. I mean, he was outstanding. I talked a lot about it on the Morning Pitt yesterday, talked about it on the postgame show Tuesday night, early Wednesday morning, depending on how you want to look at it. Nelly Cummings played like a guy who's been in the NCAA tournament before, a guy who knows what it takes to win in the NCAA tournament. And I don't want to say he put the team on his back, but he did everything he could to carry them to victory. I mean, basically his whole game was huge. And it was what they brought him here to do. I mean, they brought him here to be the team's point guard and lead them through the season and share his experience and all of that. But they brought him here to help try to win in the postseason. That if they could get to the postseason, having guys like him would help them succeed. Guys who have that experience. And I think it showed on Tuesday night. I think he played like a guy who's been there. And I think he's going to be big for Pitt again tomorrow when, again, he needs to play like a guy who's been there. And then Jamarius Burton. And I don't know, what you can say about Jamarius Burton. I thought... it wasn't his best game. I mean, you look at, being in foul trouble. You look at only playing, 19 minutes. You look at only scoring 6 points, 3 of 5 from the floor, although he did have 3 assists. He also had 2 turnovers. He grabbed 3 rebounds. Didn't attempt a foul shot. And even, the foul trouble, I think, was clearly bothering him. Not being able to be on the court and help his teammates was bothering him, and I think you saw when he came in. So he had 2 fouls in the first half, didn't play a lot after that. Came in the second half, got his 3rd foul pretty quickly. Came back in, he got his 3rd foul. Where was it? Like a minute into the second half, and he sat for the next almost 6 minutes. And he came back in and he was on the court for about a minute or maybe 70 seconds when he picked up his 4th foul, and it was an offensive foul. And I think at that moment you could see Jamarius Burton pressing. That his team was down 2. He hasn't really been able to contribute much to the game. He wanted to come in and be the guy to lead the team. He wanted to be in the role that he's been in all season. And he ends up dribbling straight into a defender and taking a bad 4th foul. And then he's out, and he sits for the next, when did he come back in? About the just under 6 minute mark. So he sits for the next 6.5 minutes. And he comes in and he plays the final 6.5 or 5, the final 6 minutes of the game without picking up his 5th foul. So kudos to him on that. But he also settled in. I think after he got that 4th foul, he probably understood, like, when I get back in, because I know I'm getting back in, when I get back in, I need to be under control. I need to understand what the team needs from me in order to win this game. And he did, and he didn't hit a basket until the biggest basket of the game. Pull-up jumper, like he's hit a million times this year, and he does it with less than 10 seconds to go to win the game. A huge play from Jamarius Burton. And so you have basically everybody, basically all 10 guys contributed game-winning plays in this one, down the stretch. Basically all 6 guys who played were huge contributors to this victory. And I think that's pretty interesting. I mean, Nelly Cummings was Pitt's best player last night, but he doesn't win it without Blake Hinson's long 3, and he doesn't win it without Greg Elliott making both ends of that 1-and-1 and then hitting a jump shot. He obviously doesn't make it without, Guillermo Diaz-Graham's block or Jamarius Burton's pull-up jumper or Nike Sabandi hitting some baskets in transition. They all had to step up. And so I think about Burton being like that clutch guy, and he has been. He's been the guy who has made those plays for Pitt all season. So he came up big in that game on Tuesday night. But I started looking back over, because Pitt is, I think, now 7-3 in one possession games this year. They lost to Vanderbilt 75-74. They lost to Clemson 75-74. And they lost that season finale at Miami 78-76. But they won 6 games prior to Tuesday night. They won at Syracuse. They beat Carolina and Virginia. They beat Wake Forest and Miami, and they won at Carolina. All one-possession games. And so I started looking at those 6 games and then Tuesday night's game to see who was it. Because first I started keeping track of leading scorers in all the games. And this sort of speaks to the total team effort here. Pitt has played, 34 games now. And they've had, there I think 3 games where multiple players have been, tied for the leading score. But if you take them all together and you count that, you know what I mean? There was a game, the Notre Dame game, Nelly Cummings, Jamarius Burton, and Nike Sabandi all scored 19 each to be Pitt's leading scorer. But if you count that for each of those guys, and you look at who's been the leading scorer the most, Blake Hinson's been the leading scorer for Pitt the most, 15 games, including the Florida State road game where him and Jamarius Burton shared the team lead, and then the Virginia game at home, him and Nike Sabandi shared the team lead, but 15 times. Jamarius Burton's right behind him, 12 times. He's been the leading scorer. Nike Sabandi's been the leading scorer 5 times. Nelly Cummings has been the leading scorer 5 times, including Tuesday night when he scored 15, team high. Greg Elliott's done it twice, and Federico was the leading scorer for the team, I think in the North Florida game. So you have 6 different players who've been the leading scorer for Pitt at some point this season. Most of it has been Hinson and Burton, but they haven't been the only guys. And so I kind of looked at these one-possession games to not just figure out who was the leading scorer, but who made the plays. Who made the biggest plays? And I kind of tracked okay, this guy we're going to give 3 games to, and this guy 2, and this guy 4, and all this. Now, I took out the Wake Forest game, because Pitt made like 1 basket in the final 3.5 minutes. That game ended up a one-possession game because Wake Forest made some hoops, not because Pitt battled back or anything like that. They had a lead, and it basically Wake Forest whittled it down, and Pitt barely held on. But if you look at the other 6 games that they've won in one-possession games, so the game at Syracuse, the 2 Carolina games, the Virginia game, the Miami game, and then Tuesday night against Mississippi State, right? And you look at the big plays that were made in those games. It's all these guys. It's all of them. They all have contributed in different ways down the stretch in some of these wins. So the Syracuse game is 83-82 with 30 seconds left to go, right? Pitt's up 1. Blake Hinson, but Syracuse has the ball with 29 seconds actually. And Hinson gets a steal. He only makes 1 free throw because he gets fouled, but he makes the defensive play to get the ball back and then have an opportunity to make it a 3-point game. He makes it a 2-point game, which is what they ultimately win by 84-82. That one goes to Hinson. The Carolina game, they're up 72-69 with 30 seconds left to go. Hinson makes 2 free throws, and Sabandi goes off for a layup that makes it a 7-point game. Carolina ends up getting a 3 and a very, very late 2 to cut it down to 2 points. But those two situations of Hinson converting 2 shots from the line and Sabandi getting a layup ultimately give Pitt the cushion that if Carolina makes a shot or two, they're still going to hold on and win. Virginia game, it's tied at 60-60 with a minute left to go. Cummings goes to Federico for a layup, and then you get this succession of Nelly Cummings, Jamarius Burton, and Nike Sabandi all making 2 free throws each. And so that ultimately pushed the score to 68-62. Virginia made a 3 late. I think Royce Beekman hit it, and it made it a 68-65 game. But with Federico hitting a layup and then those 3 guys converting from the free throw line, Pitt was able to close that game out and win another 1-possession game. And then the Miami game, the home game. Do you remember this? Down 68-60 with 2.5 minutes to go. Down 8 with 2.5 minutes to go to one of the best teams in the ACC. Pitt's got the ball, and Federico gets an offensive rebound and puts it back up for a dunk. Huge play. Then you get Jamarius Burton, who went on a run here, canceling out 4 consecutive Miami possessions. He gets a defensive rebound, goes to Nelly Cummings, goes to Blake Hinson, who hits a 3. He gets another defensive rebound, goes to Cummings, who hits a pull-up jump shot. He gets a steal. Down at the other end, Hinson gets an offensive rebound and a layup. Now it's 69-68. Pitt is winning, and then finally at the very end, Burton gets another steal with 7 seconds left to go. That possession against Isaiah Wong, and Pitt ends up winning at 71-68. You had in that sequence, you had Federico get an offensive rebound and a dunk. You had Hinson get a 3 and an offensive rebound putback layup. You had Cummings hit a pull-up jump shot. And then you had Burton making these 4 consecutive defensive plays, 2 defensive rebounds and 2 steals. You had 4 guys make huge plays in that final minute, or final 2.5 minutes, to get the win. The game at Carolina, they're down 64-63 with 1:07 left to go. And it comes down to Jamarius Burton making 2 clutch free throws, making both shots from the line to win the game. And then Tuesday night, they're down 59-58 with 1:32, and it's Burton who makes the pull-up jumper to go ahead, the go-ahead winning basket, and then Guillermo Diaz-Graham getting the block. So I mean, if you sort these out, like Blake Hinson made a game-winning play or a play that contributed to the win in the right down the stretch in the Syracuse game, the home game against Carolina, and the game against Miami. And Nike Sabandi made game-winning plays down the stretch against Carolina and Virginia. Federico did it against Virginia and Miami. Nelly Cummings did it against Virginia and Miami. Guillermo Diaz-Graham did it Tuesday night against Mississippi State. And Jamarius Burton did it against Virginia, Miami, at Carolina, and against Mississippi State. It's a group effort here. And while you may have one guy that you always sort of expect to make the big plays in Jamarius Burton, he's not the only one who's doing it. He's stepping up, and he has done it. He's done it more than anybody else. But he's certainly not the only one. We can give Blake Hinson credit for 3 of those. We can give Federico, and Nike Sabandi and Nelly Cummings credit for at least 2 of those. And Guillermo Diaz-Graham, he certainly gets credit for Tuesday night as well. It's a total team effort from this group. And, I think it's what we've seen from them all season with so many different guys contributing, so many different guys who can score, so many different weapons, and they're producing. And they're not just putting up a lot of points or stats, but they're making plays when it absolutely counts, when they absolutely have to. Clutch plays down the stretch to win games. And we'll see if they need to do it again, whether they get an opportunity to do it again tomorrow afternoon against Iowa State. All right, thanks for checking out the Morning Pit today. Hope you've had a great week so far. I think you're probably like me. You're looking forward to tomorrow. The hours are ticking down. Hopefully, we'll be inside that 24-hour window soon. And before you know it, it'll be 3 o'clock, 3:30 tomorrow afternoon. Remember, we'll be live after the game tomorrow for the Panther-Lair postgame show. It's sure to be interesting. No matter what happens in the game, the postgame conversation is going to have plenty to talk about. So make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Turn on your notifications so you get an alert sent to your phone anytime we go live or anytime we post a new Morning Pit video. And do that. And like the video. We appreciate that as well. Click the like button. That would be cool. And we would appreciate it. All right, stay tuned to Panther-Lair.com between now and the game for all the coverage to get you ready for Pitt, Iowa State. And we will talk to you tomorrow. Have a great Thursday. We'll see you tomorrow morning, Friday morning, for the Morning Pit right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.